Headed to southern Italy and the Bay of Naples, you're going to want to schedule some time exploring its wonderful islands. Most people know of Capri, but today we're exploring Ischia and Procida on episode 261 of the Untold Italy podcast.
Ciao a tutti and benvenuti to Untold Italy, the travel podcast where you go to the towns and villages, mountains and lakes, hills and coastlines of Bella Italia. Each week your host, Katie Clark, takes you on a journey in search of magical landscapes, history, culture, wine, gelato, and of course, a whole lot of pasta. If you're dreaming of Italy and planning future adventures there, you've come to the right place.
Ciao a tutti! Do you dream of island life? I do, especially when it's Italian. Italy is blessed with some of the world's most beautiful islands, and today we're going to take a trip to a couple that are in easy reach of Naples, and they are Ischia and Procida. Often overshadowed by their more glamorous sister Capri, these islands are completely different to each other and offer a wonderful taste of southern Italy. Joining me today is my good friend and popular podcast guest, Holly Starr, who actually lives on Capri and has been known to take short breaks on both of the other islands. She's got a wonderful perspective on life and making the most of your time in these perfect pockets of southern Italy, so let's dive in and hear all about them. Bentornata, Holly. Welcome back to the Untold Italy podcast. How are you?
I'm wonderful. Thank you very much for having me back here. I always love talking with you, chatting with you, Katie.
Oh, ditto. I love talking with you too. It's just, it's my little home away from home in Campania. I love it. How is life on beautiful Capri?
I'm definitely not complaining. It's a beautiful sunny day here and in February as well. So I'm going to be out in the garden this afternoon. That's where I'll be.
That sounds lovely. Now, of course, you are a familiar voice to our regular listeners of the podcast, but for those of you who haven't heard your lovely Sydney accent just yet, could you do us a quick intro so everyone knows how you came to be living on Capri and what you do there now?
I came to Capri quite a while ago now, in 2013. I came here on a whim. In fact, we're going to be talking about it later because I was actually supposed to be going to Ischia and I ended up in Capri for 3 nights. It was my very first time. On my second night, I dined in a wonderful restaurant called Michelangelo where I met my now husband. And obviously, I've since moved to Capri. We have 2 beautiful children and we live here year-round, and we run food experiences and a cooking school on the island, and we grow our own food and enjoy meeting people from all over the world. So albeit that I'm on a tiny little remote island, I do feel like I'm part of something bigger.
Oh, you really are. You really are. And I mean, seriously, it is a wonderful story. And if you want the full unabridged version of this story, which we're all waiting for the movie of, you can listen to episode number 42 of this podcast, folks. Anyway, today we're not really going to be talking so much about Capri because we've talked about it quite a lot, haven't we, Holly, on the podcast? And there are quite a few episodes that people can take a listen to. But we will be taking a look at some of your neighbours there in the Tyrrhenian Sea, Ischia and Procida. So these are, like this area is just, it's ridiculously good looking, to quote a famous movie. It's just full of amazing sights and different experiences. And so we wanted to give you an idea of what that's like. So Holly, can you share with everyone what the geography and lay of the land is and describe these different islands in relation to Naples, Sorrento, and also Capri, so people get an idea of where everything's situated?
Okay, so we're relatively close together in the scheme of things. We're on the Bay of Naples, okay? So from Naples, you can catch a boat directly to Capri or to Procida and Ischia, and they stop at both islands because they're very close together. For both to come to Capri or Procida or Ischia, it's around 40 to 50 to 1 hour, depending if you're getting a slow ferry or an Alascavi, which is a fast ferry. And we can also, in the summer, there are direct ferries from Capri to Ischia as well, and again, about an hour. On that note, I would say, look, from the perspective of where I am in Anna Capri, I look across to Ischia and Procida all the time, and I always think it's so close. But living on islands, it can feel far away, but really they're so accessible. And I would say this, they're very different in terms of their topography and how they came about in terms of we're here a limestone island. Ischia and Procida are volcanic by their geology. So don't get me too much into that because that's not my expertise. But I will say this, in terms of size-wise, Ischia is the largest of all of the three islands. They're 46 kilometers, so 18 square miles. We've got Capri in the middle, which is about 10 square kilometers, 4 square miles. And we've got Procida, which is small and flat, and that is about 4 kilometers, 1.4 square miles. So in terms of population, you've got Ischia with like 60,000 residents living there. We've got Capri at 14,000 and we've got Procida at 10,000. So it just gives you an idea of the sizes. So a lot of people say, oh, Capri is such a small island. Well, in fact, Procida is a lot smaller, although probably more densely populated. And Ischia is almost, to me, like a little mini city. Like, it's big. It's 6 communes. We've only got 2 in Capri and Anna Capri. So it feels very different. They've got very different feels.
Yeah, and I think that's really exciting, actually, because they've all got different things that make them special. And, I know that sometimes you just pop over to Ischia for a break because it really is like completely different to where you live on Capri.
It is indeed. I will say one thing. Okay, island life, I believe, is like similar in any island that you live in the world, and that they've got a different ethos. It's all about relaxing. It's all about slowing down, island time, a different pace, being sleepy. All of these 3 islands are blessed with the natural wonders of beauty and landscape and architecture like nowhere else. They're all blessed, but they have very different vibes. They each have their own special, unique reason for visiting or living there. They've got their own identities. And so that's the beauty of it, is that I can just jump on a ferry from Capri to Ischia or to Procida and feel like I'm on a completely different island. So for me, I absolutely love it because it's so close. Sometimes in the summer season, for example, if I get a chance to leave, which I did a lot more when we had the restaurant and when the kids were a little younger, I used to just jump on a ferry with the kids. Unfortunately, John Luke would mostly be working, but I got to get away a couple of times by myself. And I just loved Ischia because it felt, number one, it was a great place for me to take the kids by myself. It's very relaxing. It had a similar vibe to Capri, although, like, in terms of being an island, although the kids got to enjoy a sandy beach and they couldn't believe it. And that's one of the major differences, I will say, between Capri and Ischia and Procida is that, we've got the stones versus sand.
Yeah, it's super interesting that they're so close but yet so different. So how about we do this? How about we do a little deep dive into Ischia first and tell everyone what Ischia is all about, and then we'll move on to Procida, because we have, as I mentioned, we have talked a lot about Capri, and I know people really love it because it's really spectacular and dramatic and it's got a little bit of a mystique about it. But Ischia has got its own special... I loved it. I have to say, I was saying to someone last week at an event that they'd never been to Italy before, but they were going to spend 10 days on Ischia, and I went, ooh, that's a very smart move. I said, I was really impressed. I said, I don't think I've been more relaxed than I have been on Ischia, actually, I have to say. But let's talk about it a little bit. Give us an idea of what's happened there, what it's all about, and, we know it's bigger, but what are the things to do and where are the places that we need to see?
Okay, well, I will say that what you go there for is thermal spas and springs, etc. So it's very much like an island of healing properties. And that's maybe why everyone feels so relaxed there. And beach clubs, there are so many beach clubs. Now, I know, and I've talked about this before in my other podcasts, I'm not as beachy. It's quite funny that I'm on an island because that I live on an island that's known for beaches. So I'm not actually the biggest beach person. I do love it more on the cusps of the season because it's a little bit more relaxed. But Ischia, because there are so many and it's more spread out, it feels different than in Capri because I guess ours are very concentrated and also small and difficult kind of to navigate. But I find Ischia's beach is much more How do you explain it? Like the beaches are more long and sparse.
Oh, first of all, I need to say, are you even Australian if you don't like a beach?
I'm a natural redhead. No, I'm just not good in the sun. That's what I'll say. But I love the beach. I love nature. It's just that I have to be very sun careful.
Yes, and I do too. And so it's one of those, I guess, those things that people think of Australians as all suntanned and blonde hair. But sorry, guys, we've broken all those rules, both of us. So, but yes, one thing that really struck me when I first arrived in Ischia was the fact that there were so many beach clubs and so much beach, because, in fact, I hadn't actually seen that in any other part of Italy except maybe Puglia. And so there's just like a lot of beach everywhere. And so you can really find your patch in the sun and a lovely sunbed and umbrella anywhere on that island. And I think, you know, like in some of these places, maybe like Positano or Capri or like anywhere else along that coast, you're gonna need to get very organised about, you know, arranging your beach going activities. But I feel like in Ischia it's like a lot easier because there are so many options.
Yes, that's what I was getting at. So I agree with that. And again, now, so moving one thing, you've got the beaches. The next is the thermal spas. Now, again, there's paid spas and then there's free. For example, the Bay of Sorgetto, we can go and experience that for free, but you've got to do quite a bit of a walk to get down. So I, again, haven't spent so much time there, but I realize and I appreciate that is one of the big draw cards of Ischia.
I went there a couple of years ago and, yeah, this is an amazing experience. All right, so I do not like cold water at all. I really don't. We live here in Australia on the ocean and it's freezing. So, you know, if anyone who knows ocean water, it's a lot colder than seawater. But there, everything is warm for some reason, even the sea around. But you can go on a boat tour around the island, and we can talk about a bit more about that later. But it's instead of walking down to this beach where you can feel the thermal waters in the sea, you can actually swim from the boat. Like we had a little boat, and the guy was, what did he say? He said, "Leave nothing behind in Ischia," and by that he meant you have to try everything. You don't leave any experiences to chance. You need to jump in the water and you need to swim and you need to go and put your bottom on that warm rock and see how it feels. And you have to be careful because it actually can get quite hot. But at this place, there's everyone sitting around just bobbing up and down in the water enjoying this warm sea. And it's sort of like you'll have a little bit of coolness and then there'll be like a warmness that washes over you, and it's super nice. Like that was fun, but I also really liked going to the Ngombo Thermal Park, which is like it's about 20 pools that are all different temperatures, and you go in and out of each pool. Well, now, sorry everyone, I said to you I do only like warm water. So my favourite pool was around 36 or 37 degrees centigrade, and I didn't want to leave. I literally could have sat there for the rest of my life. I reckon I was like, this is the best thing ever. And even our hotel that we stayed at, which is I can highly recommend, which is the Regina Isabella. It was a bit of a splurge for me, but they had their own. They get access to this thermal water and you can go and have treatments, and even the outside pool there was 36 degrees. And I mean, seriously, they will bring you the limoncello spritz while you're sitting in the pool. And I just didn't think I was going to leave. The only thing that got me out of that pool was to go into the one that was slightly warmer indoors. I was so happy. Oh, anyway, that is like a really good reason to go if that's the type of thing that you like to do, and it definitely is mine.
Yeah, well, relaxing in a thermal spa doesn't sound too bad. I think that's a big draw card, like I said. So for me, Ischia, as also we've got the beaches, we've got the thermal spas, the history, there's hiking. I mean, of course, like if you've seen the castle, I've visited a couple of times. It's stunning, just even looking at it. And then actually visiting it is another experience altogether. And you've been yourself, haven't you?
I haven't actually been inside the castle, but my parents have. And it is like one of those iconic kind of castles because you've got that little causeway that goes across out into the sea to get there. And you can imagine that it was a pretty impressive stronghold because, this poor little island was buffeted by pirates, and I think every single person wanted to have a piece of it, which you can understand after I just described those thermal bars to you. So you've got the Kingdom of Naples and Sicily and France fighting over them, and pirates and marauders. So they needed a castle.
I know it's a common theme, actually, because it's the same history, I guess, the same sort of battles that were fought in Capri as well as Procida and Ischia. So they have such a wide-ranging lot of influences in the culture itself. So, and that comes out in the landscape, in the history, in their traditions, in the food, in everything. So, yeah, definitely go for the history. And then you've got, it's a natural beauty like Capri. I mean, there's so many hikes. There's a lot of agriculture, which is interesting as well because I would say some people don't see that side of Capri so much because we're a lot smaller island and also we have a bigger focus on tourism, I would say. However, in Ischia, there is still a lot of agriculture. You can go to agriturismos. You can go to try the wines that are made. They've got 2 DOC wines, the red wine and white wine. There's another side to the island. It's not all beaches, We've got beaches, you've got agriculture, you've got the history, you've got the thermal baths. There's a lot to do. And, it's not definitely not a day trip. So again, when people are talking about Capri and you say, like how many people do Capri as a day trip, and I'm always encouraging people to stay at least longer than a day. But Ischia is another level altogether because you have 6 different, very separate communes, they're completely different in terms of their layout, their feel, the vibe in each of them. So for example, you've got Forio, but then you've got San Angelo, which is like the more, so I guess more boutique-y type. That kind of reminds me a little bit more of Capri vibe, whereas Forio is way more relaxed, I think. I don't know. I think they're very, all the different parts. You've got the Ischia, Porto and Ponte and then Casamicciola. They're all very different.
I think Sant'Angelo is really it's like your Mediterranean island. It's that ultimate little fishing village type vibe. And I know the former, was it Angela Merkel? She has a house there, the former German chancellor. And I think it's very popular with European, especially German visitors, isn't it? So again, you have this very different vibe because it's a European and Italian destination. Would you say like more than Capri, which is a bit more English-speaking, international?
Although I will say that definitely that is changing more so these days because I think, Ischia is now very much on the map from a tourism perspective globally. And I think, is it Elena Ferranti books and, all the series, et cetera. And there's a lot more of an attraction with films being set there, et cetera. And as much as I wish I don't like the comparisons so much as being, the neighbor of Capri or this or that. I think they are also unique in their own ways. And I think all of them are worth more than a day trip. That's what I'm going to say. And even when we get to the topic of Procida, it may be so small, but it has the same ethos of every other, of all the islands together being that of you need to get into the island rhythm. The island rhythm isn't a day trip.
We're big proponents of slow travel and I guess island time. Maybe that's because we're Australian, which is like the world's biggest island. But you really can only scratch the surface if you're rushing around and trying to get in and out of the port because you have to, when you're going to these ports, you have to get there fairly, ahead of schedule so you can make sure you get on the boats because it's busy, especially in summertime. So there's so many things you can do. Ischia also has the Botanic Gardens, doesn't it, there? And they have a lot of concerts and things. So it's got a lot of big cultural heritage in Ischia too.
Yes, there's beautiful gardens to walk through. I think it's the Giardino La Mortella, a beautiful 5-acre manicured gardens in the Forio region. So there's so many things to do. Like I said, you could spend a week there and not have even touched the sides because again, it's there for relaxing. It's the whole idea of, for example, you might not even be sightseeing. You just might be taking in those thermal baths and the beaches and you come back on another holiday to then do the history and the exploring. Of course, you're enjoying the cuisine. And even though we are so close, we all have very different dishes. We don't need to talk about Capris because I know I've done a whole podcast on that, the delicious dishes of Capri. But look, in just across the waters, there is completely different cuisines. So in Ischia, one of the famous dishes is rabbit. And, there's something like we don't have in Capri at all, yet we're just across the water. I think it's quite interesting. And they each Procida as well has their little specialties, and they also do have rabbit on their menus, but they also have their lingua di Procida, the lingua di bue, which is like a pastry with lemon cream in it. Actually, in Procida, I had one of my most favorite dishes. It was unexpectedly delicious. It was an anchovy pasta. And it just blew my mind because I always assumed there was no cheese ever to be allowed with seafood, but it had like a bit of pecorino on it. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. I can't say if it's like the island's dish or anything, but it was definitely something that I hadn't eaten before. And same with Ischia, I will say that it's very much also reminds me of, like I said before, it's like almost like a mini city. So it's like a mini city from Naples. So you can go there and get good pizza, Napolitan pizza.
We had some great pizza there, but also they do some cooking in the thermal sands there, because there's like some of the sand is hot. So in some parts, I think it's near Forio. No, it's on the other side, further along from Sant'Angelo. But there's a special beach where they can actually cook in the sand, which is super cool. But I wanted to say something else, and that's about shopping. I was like, oh my goodness, Ischia. If you're the type of person that likes to go to little boutiques and get styled by Italian ladies, this is a place for you. Like, we were in Lacco Ameno, and it was just like shop upon shop upon shop. It was very elegant and very lovely, lots of jewellery, and if that's the type of thing that you like, you should definitely go there.
That, and also I would definitely say that I've bought lots of beautiful local artisan jewellery from Ischia. I shouldn't have spent as much as I have on different occasions when I've gone. And I also tell you another thing I purchased, and I just like to trial different things always, and there are lots of creams like made from the thermal properties and things like that. So I bought a lot of like body treatment lotions and things from there, as well as local art and jewelry. And yeah, I'm with you. I've found unique things, very unique.
Yeah.
Ischia is not the Capri in terms of the big label shopping. You're not seeing Gucci and Dolce & Gabbana, etc. So it's very different. So I like that because it's something that's more unique. And I'm a big supporter of all local artisans.
I think it's better. It's more exclusive when it's that way. Everyone has Louis Vuitton on Capri, don't they?
Not me. No. So yeah, Ischia and the shopping, beautiful, different, unique shops. Like I'm saying again, I'm keep on going back. We're all islands with the same ethos, but they're very different in terms of what offerings there are. So, just because you've been to Capri or just because you've been to Ischia, that doesn't mean you've seen the three of us. You've got to get a taste of how different we are, but yet so close.
I think with Ischia as well and this is something that was kind of surprising to me, is that you can rent a car there, and if you want to get around, if you're going to stay there for like a week or something, it's probably a good idea to do that, because the taxis are actually a little bit expensive on the island, and there are local buses as well. But I didn't realise just how big it was and how many different options there were. So yeah, the taxis are cute though. They're like those little Ape taxis, aren't they? They look super cute.
Yes, there are some of those. Yeah, actually, I have heard the same thing. I've never driven, or John Lucas has never driven in Ischia, but I have had guests inform me that they hired a car and they found that amazing to get around. That's an important thing because, again, when we're comparing that to Capri, number one, you cannot bring a car onto the island if you're not a resident during the summer months. And number two, Procida. I find Procida, for example, I love going there because it's so small. You can walk everywhere, but also they just have bikes, and I love riding a bike. It's just, in Capri, I'm going to be honest, Gianluca, he rides here. I'm going to be honest, I wouldn't even drive here, let alone ride a bike up these windy cliff roads. But in Procida, I just feel like, I know this sounds crazy, I feel like I'm in a little movie set going through cobblestone streets with my bike. Like, I love it. I find Procida, again, it's another feel altogether. And I don't know if it's a great time to transition to Procida, because Procida for me, like when I arrived there, I was like, wow, what do you visit there for? The first thing I saw, the most beautiful, colorful pastel houses. It's so picturesque. I couldn't believe it. It's just so beautiful, like stunningly beautiful. So that's what it's known for. It's colorful pastel painted houses. And it's very much like a fisherman feel. Like it's like a village feel. To me, it's like the Procida reminds me of Marina Piccola. Particularly because, again, like going back to like how the islands are broken up. So in Capri, we've got Anna Capri and Capri. And then, like I said, we've got Ischia, we've got 6 different communes. Procida, again, has their 3 or 4 little areas that are distinct on the island. And Coricella, for me, is even more so like a Marina Piccola. Beautiful fisherman vibe of like fishing nets, you see all, it's just beautiful. The seaside little restaurants, and this is crazy as well because, again, living where we do, you have to remember that we're a summer resort. So it's very difficult for us to leave the island during the summer. And crazy as this is, I mean, this is the same when we celebrated Gianluca's birthday in Positano for his 40th. And it was one of the first times his mother had been to Positano, yet she's lived in Capri her whole entire life. Well, this was the same situation. I have been a Procida on numerous occasions because it is very close. I find it very relaxing. I usually would go there in the off season by myself to work, and I find myself very productive when I'm in Procida. But I'll say that in last November, I took the whole family, and it was the first time Gianluca had been there. And I was like, wow, you live so close, but you haven't been here? He'd been to Ischia, but he'd never been to Procida. And he thought it was beautifully cute like I did. And we spent 3 nights there with the kids, and we just had a ball. It was beautiful. And it was November. We lucked out, of course. We had the most magical weather. We stayed in Coricella. We can walk everywhere. The kids had a ball. They loved it. And they found it a beautiful vibe. They wanted to hire bikes, but we didn't get around to doing that. But we did walk over the whole island, and we just loved it. And, for us, it's a smaller community. Like, they've got a lot less people, but we found that there was more people out all the time. They actually had more restaurants open in Procida in November than we had in Capri at that time.
That's interesting. It was a setting for the talented Mr. Ripley, wasn't it?
Yes.
They filmed some scenes there, and Il Postino, they're very famous. So it's got that really languid, kind of laid-back, relaxing vibe, that island time. I love that movie. And the light, spectacular.
The light is amazing. And the island was awarded the Italian Capital of Culture in 2022. Albeit being very small, there's a lot of reasons to go there. Aside from the beauty of the pastel painted beautiful houses, we did a boat trip around the island. That was amazing because this island, they say, was actually formed by an eruption of 4 different volcanoes. And going around the island, you can see they're submerged now. And it was so interesting to hear the history behind all of that and how obviously that's influenced the topography. So, I mean, we're very different islands in that respect. Capri is like a limestone island, so that's where you get the dramatic cliffs from. And that's where you get, the pebbled beaches with the crystal clear water. Of course, having the pebbles down below has a different light to it and a different color. And like I said, the landscape is very different. Again, but we're so close. So there is different colors again because you've got the sand, you've got darker volcanic type sand. So it's just a different landscape. Yet we're so close. Also, the interesting thing about Procida is that there was a prison there from 1830 to 1988. And it's very big and impacting. And that's where, if you're down in Coricella, you can look up and you see this big structure. And it's such again, another contrast that there was this prison there that, hosted so many criminals over the years on this paradise island. It's just like another historical backdrop to the wild beauty of the Campania Islands.
So I was just going to say, just circling back to boat tours, because I've did one in Ischia, which was fantastic with the guy, Leave Nothing Behind in Ischia. Massimo, his name was. I've done a few boat tours in Capri, and this was really interesting and different. And you stop off at Sant'Angelo, and also we did that swim to the thermal waters in the beach there. And he also got us to swim in the grotto, which I did not listen to the instructions. because I don't know why, and I bumped my head. But I was okay. I think I'm okay, yeah. But it was really interesting and different, and he took us to this restaurant that overlooked the castle. Oh, stop it now. My friend and I that I went with, we were just sort of pinching ourselves going, is this real? Are we here? Like, what's happening? So I wanted to mention that, but also the time of year, because like you mentioned that at the end of November, Capri was shutting down a bit and it was open on Procida. In Ischia, we were there, this is 2023, we were there the first week of October and things were starting to close down, which I think's people need to sort of understand, because the thing is about island time is that you work, don't you, you've got a very definite season, Easter to kind of early October, and then
Easter till the end of October.
Well, I mean, like the Ngombo on the Poseidon thermal parks, they were closing down the week that we went. That would have been the first week of October. So I don't know if they're going to adjust that for changes in climate, because very definitely people will be swimming in the sea until the end of October. But yeah, they were definitely going to be going on their break. And it's something actually, on the one hand, it's super frustrating for me. But on the other hand, I totally respect it. It's like, nah, this is what we're doing. If you don't like it, bad luck. And we're going on holidays.
Well, I will say this, and you will laugh that also we have spent Christmas and New Year in Ischia as a family, because again, it's different for us because we live here. But I'm going to say that for Ischia, for us, had a very different offering for us in the winter as well. But look, it's a different type of tourism. When you're going to visit somewhere in the winter, you have to understand that there's going to be a lot of closures, okay? Because unfortunately, this area in general has been marketed as a summer resort. I'm going to break all myths. Yes, we live here year round. There is a community here year round, which means there are, I know people ask me all the time, yes, there are still ferries that run. Yes, we do go to and from places. We do have restaurants open. We do have activities happening. There is, especially around Christmas, there is a lot of activity, and it's fun. It's community. It's, all the things that the cities have.
If you're going for a beach vibe, that's what you need to know. Like if you're going for the beach clubs and have the thermal baths and all of that stuff, if that's what you want, just be aware of the timing. Having just got back from Italy in wintertime, I just think it's completely different atmosphere. It's more community orientated and convivial and local, and I found it really lovely, actually. So I think that, you don't need to go at these specific times that everything's set up for to have a good experience. Absolutely not.
Look, I will say one thing, going back to boats, two things I would say. Firstly, when you were talking about a boat ride around Ischia, I haven't actually done a boat ride around Ischia before. I have done the boat ride around Procida, and every year we will, without a doubt, do a boat ride around Capri. And the reason why I say is because it never gets old. It is so beautiful. It is so beautiful, but also seeing the islands from the sea is obviously, it puts things into perspective when you're on land. You kind of get your bearings. And, it's so insightful to see, the landscape as such, and how that then influences the island and the way the island works. So yes, boat trip, always recommend. You've put me on my thought process of organizing a boat trip around Ischia, because I feel terrible that I haven't done that. That's the first thing I'm going to say. Second thing I'm going to say, talking about ferries. One thing you do need to be aware of course, we are all islands. So on that front, in terms of flexibility, there are days, albeit rare, where the seas get rough and boats may be cancelled. So you need to then plan your holiday around that. Obviously, in certain months, there are more likely than not going to be calm or rough seas. So in planning your visit to any island, you need to think of those things. And that can affect also your private boat. But, trust me, I have a million apps. I've become the weather watcher because everything depends on the weather here. And so I would say this, some people, if their boat was cancelled, get upset. All I'm going to say is, yes, that's upsetting, but reschedule it. But you don't want to be out there if your boat is cancelled. You don't want to be on that water. It's best you take the advice of your captains. If the boats aren't running for a reason. So I say, like, and that's the time I think maybe before I moved to Capri, maybe I was less go with the flow. Now I have become like, you know what? That just can't happen today. So we're going to have to just find an alternative. And that's what I think one of the beautiful things about island life is that you just have to adapt. It's like, okay, no one's coming, no one's going. On this day, there's no boats. This is the way it's going to be. So let's just make the most of it and go out and explore the island or do whatever the things you can do when the seas are off, you know?
Yeah, there's nothing better. Honestly, it's a beautiful pace, and people have been enjoying these islands for millennia, haven't they? So we know that the Etruscans were there, the Greeks were there, and the Roman emperors. Everyone was there, and I think even Augustus, he did some trades, didn't he?
Interesting story, yes. He actually owned Ischia, and then when he saw Capri, he traded Ischia for Capri. And he actually had commenced building some of his villas on Capri. And when he passed and his stepson Tiberius took over as the Roman emperor, he, they say, commissioned 12 villas on Capri. So a lot of the Roman Empire and ruins were set in Capri. And Ischia, again, like we were talking before with the historical context, was fought over by so many different, there was so many different wars and different battles that have influenced the island. And again, same with Capri. They had the pirates, they had the Normans, they had British, French. It was like, very, very different influences.
Yeah, it's super interesting. And I think, with Ischia, just another point of difference is that you do really get that volcanic activity, and that's why you're still getting, because it's quite close to Pozzuoli, isn't it, which it's on the mainland, and there's quite a bit of volcanic activity there, which is, like, I just find it fascinating. Like, this is nature. It's raw. It's real. No one can do anything about it. Like, we can't control it. We've got to just relax, enjoy, and take the bounty of this nature that it's giving us, because we can't change it. And I think that's a beautiful thing.
I know. I think Ischia is referred to as the green island, and because, the beauty that it's created because of the rich, fertile soils, etc. It's magical. This is the thing. I mean, the landscape is epic, and it's epic because of the way it has formed over millennials, like you say. So, in Capri, speaking of Capri, like those limestone dramatic cliffs that they say actually that Capri, don't quote me on this because I'm certainly no geologist in this respect, but that Capri was a part of the Sorrentine Peninsula, while the Ischia and Procida, if I'm correct, were more evolved from volcanic activity. So that's why we have the different types of beaches, for example, the sandy volcanic kind of sand versus in Capri we've got, pebbles. You either have rock platforms or pebbled beaches. So it's very different in terms of that.
I just love how different they all are. So, Holly, thank you, grazie mille, for taking us on this virtual trip.
My pleasure. Obviously, I'm very, very proud of living in where we do in Capri, but also our neighboring islands are just as magical, and I love exploring them. So, and I definitely urge everybody to, if you've seen one doesn't mean you've seen the others. They're very, very different. That's what I need to, I guess, emphasize.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's something like deep in my soul that connects me to that region, and I know probably you and others feel the same. I don't know, maybe it's that volcanic activity, and maybe it's that connection to the earth that you feel when you're there. Who knows? But I think it's definitely worth spending a bit of time. And I think we've gone into a lot of detail on previous podcast episodes about how to make the most of your time on Capri and avoid the crowds. But you can also combine this activity. The best way to do it is to stay overnight. And we've said this before. If you're going to rush in on a day trip, you're going to be there with the crowds trying to get in and out. But if you spend time on any of these islands, then you will get a really true taste of the local island life and really start to understand what makes the people there tick and why you have the experiences that you can have there.
No, I agree. Definitely, to really get the most out of the experience, it's time. And you have to give something time to let it give back to you. And yes, they all have a special energy.
They do. Now, Holly, I know our listeners will want to stay in touch with you and tap into your knowledge about Capri and maybe drop in for a cooking class or a dinner, or a special dinner with you. How can they do that?
definitely seek us out. We've got our website at www.giardinodecapri.com. And find us on Instagram. We actually do share our little adventures on other islands as well. So you will see we've got highlights of Procida and Ischia there. So you can also pop in for a bit of that in terms of this podcast. And we are at Michelangelo_Capri. So find us on Instagram, follow along. We do lots of little Insta stories. And we would love to see and welcome you, cook with you if you're staying in Capri. And yeah, just come along for the island ride.
Amazing, amazing. Of course, we're going to put all those details into the podcast show notes for you, so you can reach out to Holly there. Okay, grazie mille, Holly. Let's chat again very soon. And I just feel like I'm getting on a boat now. Let's go.
Well, thank you for listening, everybody. Thank you always for hosting me, Katie, and buona giornata from Capri.
Ciao, ciao.
Ciao.
Friends, I have to admit I hesitated recording this episode, and I've delayed it for a little while because in a sea of hyper-touristic experiences that you do find around Naples, Ischia and Procida are a charm. Here you'll find a slower pace of life and more charming experiences than you're going to find on the rest of this coastline. Let's just say they are more like the Italy that you dream of. Well, the one that I dream of anyway. And I'd really like them to stay that way. I guess the reality is, though, that nowhere is a secret these days, especially places that are relatively easy to get to. If you want true secrets, then I think you're going to need to put in some serious effort in terms of driving and getting out into the great unknown. But until then, enjoy Ischia, Procida and Capri slowly. To learn more about these islands and find Holly's details at Capri, Michelangelo and Giardino di Capri, head on over to our show notes at untolditaly.com/261 for episode number 261. And there you're going to find links to her website and social media accounts for your southern Italian island fix. Grazie mille. Thanks to everyone for tuning in to Untold Italy. I hope you enjoyed today's show. If you did, then it would be amazing if you gave us a rating or review in your favourite podcast app. We really appreciate everyone who has done that so far. Grazie. Thank you. That's all for this episode. Next time on Untold Italy, we're going on a road trip around Puglia. But until then, it's ciao for now. The Untold Italy podcast is an independent production. Podcast editing, audio production and website development by Mark Hatter, production assistance and content writing by the other Katie Clark. Yes, there are two of us. For more information about Untold Italy, please visit untolditaly.com.